He owes the House an explanation. He said that the former Transport Secretary was only asked to resign after further information came to light.
What is that?
What was that further information?
Exactly.
I'm not going to disclose private conversations. Further information came to light. The Justice Secretary resigned. As I say, what a marked contrast. Whilst she's obsessing with the Westminster issues, we're getting on with fixing the mess, fixing the foundations, that £22 billion black hole, our prisons bursting, Mr. Speaker, as we found out.
Keir Starmer thought he was stepping into 10 Downing Street to lead the nation. Instead, he walked straight into a political ambush, a plot twist straight out of a Netflix thriller. Before he could even warm the Prime Minister's seat or misplace his first policy memo, thousands flooded the streets, demanding his resignation. So what triggered this nationwide eruption? Why are Brits ditching their tea for torches? And the biggest question of all, can Starmer survive the chaos of his own premiere episode? Buckle up, this political drama is only getting started.
Should resign and find out. Mr. Speaker, if he wants to know what Conservatives would do, he should resign and find out. Until then,
I'll decide when there's more.
Mr. Speaker, until then, I'm the one asking the questions. There's a petition out there, 2 million people asking him to go. He's the one who doesn't know. He's the one who doesn't know how things work. It is not government that creates growth, Mr. Speaker. It is business.
But before we dive in, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Some prime ministers dream of making history. Keir Starmer, he might have just made it in record time for the fastest political nosedive before even tripping over the Downing Street cat. The man had barely warmed the seat at number 10 when thousands of furious citizens swarmed the streets. Not with flowers or welcome baskets, but with chants, rage, and resignation, demands that shook Westminster like a Glastonbury headliner. Now, that's one hell of a housewarming.
I asked you, would you like to take this opportunity to say sorry to voters who voted for you, like Chrissy, pensioners who are about to lose hundreds this winter because of your choices?
What I'd say to Chrissy is this. I absolutely promised that we would stabilise the economy to make sure we never had the economy getting out of control again. We then discovered £22 billion missing.
Okay, so you've mentioned the £22 billion a couple of times. Just because I've asked you a couple of times and you have just skirted around it, would you like to say sorry?
The people who should be saying sorry are the last government who left a hole.
One moment, he was gliding into office, like a budget Obama with a British accent. And the next, he was peeking through the curtains of number 10, like a man who just realized he'd crashed the wrong job interview. What happened? Keir, you were supposed to be the calm after the storm, the guy with the binder, the sensible suit, the soothing, reasonable tone. Instead, Britain's got buyer's remorse before the post-election bunting even made it to the recycling bin.
Nigel Farage is fawning over Putin. That's not patriotism.
In July, Reform UK fought the election on a policy to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. Are you Nigel Farage in disguise?
Nigel Farage didn't even turn up to the debate in Parliament today. Nigel Farage is fawning over Putin. That's not patriotism. That is not what working people need. What I've done is take the duty of Prime Minister seriously, which is to ensure that our citizens are safe and secure, and this decision is made to ensure that.
It all started so promisingly. After years of political circus acts, Boris with Partygate and Liz, let's crash the economy in under a week. Truss. The UK was desperate for something, anything that resembled grown-up governance. And then came Starmer. He looked the part, spoke in full sentences, used words with more than 2 syllables. He didn't seem powered entirely by scandal, ego, or Haribo. Finally, a prime minister who wouldn't tank the pound or declare war on cucumbers, or so we thought.
What we're saying about security for our economy is what we were saying going into the election, what we said out the other side, but now we've got to turbocharge it and link it to the other measures for lowering trade barriers. So the reaction to the challenges of the last few days is not for us to say, well, the first thing we'll now do is to put on one side our fiscal rules, is to remind people why we put them in place in the first place, which is to create a certain
He rode into power on a wave of quiet confidence, and even louder disappointment in everyone who came before him. Starmer's whole pitch? Competence. Boring, beige, unshakable competence, like electing a human filing cabinet, predictable, safe, and probably smelling faintly of printer toner. But here's the twist. Turns out even filing cabinets can catch fire if you ignore them long enough. Now we've got a prime minister who's barely had time to find the office kettle, already staring down crowds so massive they make a Taylor Swift stadium tour look underwhelming.
One of the most divisive, dangerous speeches I think I've ever heard a politician do, because it completely ignores both sides of this hideous situation. What I would want to say to Sir Keir Starmer, if I ever had the opportunity to interview him, is what does he mean by far right? Because you can't have these conversations unless we all agree on a definition. And I think that definition is open to debate. Also, if you're taking some scally little 18-year-old who has never read a newspaper in his life, who doesn't have any politics, who basically doesn't have a job, isn't in education, watches some violent stuff online, and then decides to go out and have a ruck, if you call him far right, you are basically undermining the value of that phrase. And there are...
So, why the rage? What did Starmer do, or more accurately, not do, that got thousands of Brits flooding the streets with placards and megaphones before he even finished rearranging the office furniture? The answer, in true British fashion, everything and nothing all at once. Let's break it down. Remember all those campaign promises? Of course you don't. Neither does he. Starmer ran on a platform of hope, transformation, and fixing everything. The NHS, the economy, climate change. You know, just the small stuff. But the second he stepped into power, it was like someone hit the amnesia button. Suddenly, the green energy revolution became a beige energy suggestion, funding the NHS. That morphed into a PowerPoint presentation on fiscal responsibility. Support for workers' rights? Well, striking nurses and train conductors got a firm handshake and a polite, "We'll get back to you." And this wasn't just political pivoting. This was Olympic-level policy gymnastics. The people voted for change. What they got? Continuity, with a slightly better haircut, and that's when the eye-rolling turned into foot-stomping. Social media erupted. Hashtags trended. Memes multiplied, like bin bags on a London street during a sanitation strike. And then it happened. The protests.
Keir Starmer has made an absolutely shocking admission today. He has announced that globalization is over. Now, this will be quite shocking to some of you guys, because I know a lot of you in the comments like to call him things like a globalist puppet. He loves to spend his time abroad at conventions with all his bureaucrat mates who absolutely are obsessed with the idea of globalization. And don't forget that he went viral for this clip here.
Let's just ask you quickly, you have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained, and you know it's closed, and we're not having meaning. Once you get out of Westminster, whether it's Davos or anywhere else, you actually engage with people that you can see working with in the future. Westminster is just a tribal.
Downing Street turned into ground zero for public fury. An explosive mix of chants, sarcasm, and sheer exhaustion. Climate activists, union workers, fed-up voters, they all descended like a storm, united by one thing. Enough was enough. Heating bills that could rival a mortgage. Broken promises wrapped in press conferences. The message was loud and clear. We gave you the keys, now give us back the damn car. But this wasn't just a PR nightmare. It was a full-blown political panic attack unraveling live. Because this crowd, they weren't the usual angry fringe or the rival party faithful. These were his people, the loyal, the believers, the ones who stuck around. And yet, this isn't just about one man. Sure, Starmer's found himself the unwilling face of a country hungover from Brexit, confused by its own economy, and still twitching from the trauma of a pandemic. Britain's been passed around like a lukewarm pint. Tories clinging to the good old days, Labour clutching their polling spreadsheets, and the public gripping the last nerve they haven't completely lost. There's a fog of fatigue hanging in the air, and it's not just from the policies, it's from the soul-crushing sense that every leader now speaks fluent beige. Empty words, safe takes, no fire, no fight, just a steady hum of meh as the country teeters on the edge of apathy.
100 days in Downing Street, and already Keir Starmer is reaching for the reset button. We told you that the honeymoon period was going to be brief. Yes, he won a landslide election victory, but that support was thinly spread across the country, and arguably he's made his honeymoon period briefer than it needed to be. Ever since he walked through that door on July the 5th, the narrative has been one of doom and gloom, a repeated emphasis on this £22 billion hole in the public finances, when actually the economic picture has brightened. Inflation, for example, is back near the Bank of England's 2% target, but this negative narrative has already been spooking both consumers and...
The Labour shift to centrism was sold as strategic, sensible, electable. In reality, it landed like political oat milk, bland, inoffensive, and somehow still a letdown. Young voters, already running on fumes after lockdowns and rent they can't afford, weren't asking for perfection. They were begging for passion. Instead, they got a soggy sparkler. And now, they're done pretending that polished silence is some kind of strength. But while the official party lines drone on, something else is happening. Quiet, steady, undeniable. Grassroots movements are growing like mold in a damp council flat. Unwanted by the establishment, but impossible to ignore. Independent MPs are pulling crowds, not because they're flawless, but because they show up, because they speak like humans, not walking disclaimers spat out by a focus group. This new rebellion isn't noisy, it's organized. And that should send chills down the spine of every career politician hoping to sleepwalk into another safe election cycle. Starmer, caught in the headlights of his own making, stood blinking at the outrage like someone who'd lost the plot halfway through the very story he was meant to lead. And the backlash wasn't just about his policies, it was about what he had come to symbolize. The cautious middle, the spreadsheet politics, the era of leaders who treat trust like a branding issue, who think a nation in crisis can be soothed with a tidy LinkedIn post and a neutral tone.
I beg you, Keir Starmer, if you think that an £18 million penthouse is necessary for your child to complete his GCSEs while you're campaigning, why do you not think it's necessary for disabled people to have up to £761 or so to focus on surviving, paying their access needs, paying for mobility aid? Do you think that disabled people don't deserve the bare minimum to be able to pay their living costs in a country that is despicably ableist?
What comes next doesn't feel like a strategic pivot. It feels like the political equivalent of a choose-your-own-downfall novel, and Starmer's flipping pages blind. He's landed squarely in that uniquely British political crisis. Not explosive, but slow-burning and deeply embarrassing. The Labour Party isn't just grumbling behind closed doors anymore. The whispers are louder. They're becoming headlines. Polite disagreements have twisted into side-eyes across the benches, and that so-called internal debate, it's starting to sound a lot like a mutiny with good manners. Starmer's carefully curated image of unity, of quiet competence, is cracking under pressure, and no amount of middle ground rhetoric or well-tied neutral tone ties is going to hold it together. As he tries to keep the lid on dissent inside the party, the public's patience outside is vanishing, fast, like steam off a broken boiler in midwinter. It's gone before you know it. Meanwhile, the polls, once solid enough to lean on, are starting to wobble, not crash, not collapse. Just that subtle, uneasy shift, like a trifle you know shouldn't be standing, but no one wants to be the first to say it's sinking.
Just what we're doing, we're clearing up the mess that they left. We're dealing with global instability, and we recognise the pressures that are bearing down on businesses and individuals and working people. That's why we're rolling up our sleeves. And yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to announce the national living wage increasing by £1,400. That's a pay rise for millions of workers. We've announced £150 for the Warm Homes discount, extended now to 6 million households. That's 1 in 5 families. And wages are going up faster than prices. And never forget, the party opposite, worst living standards on record, inflation up to 11%, public services left on their knees.
What once looked like a steady march toward number 10 now feels more like an awkward jog through a minefield, littered with broken trust, cancelled subscriptions, and the echoes of voters asking, wait, is there a return policy on this guy? Wait. The benefit of the doubt spent. And now, in the vacuum left by cautious leadership and half-hearted convictions, new voices are stepping in, and some of them are actually interesting. Independent MPs are picking up steam. Grassroots candidates are going viral, not for stunts or slogans, but for the wild novelty of sounding like actual people. The national mood is shifting. No longer maybe next time, but maybe someone else entirely. That's the danger of centrism without charisma, of strategy without spark. Starmer's facing a choice now. Show up with something real, or retreat once again into the gray comfort zone of non-committal statements and focus-grouped platitudes. But here's the spoiler. This time, the storm won't just pass. And the public, they're not forgetting, not again.
Breaking news just in is that Annalisa Dodds, now she's the Minister for International Development, she has resigned her post over Keir Starmer's decision to cut international aid. She, of course, was a minister attending cabinet, former Shadow Chancellor, former chair of the Labour Party, an incredibly senior figure in the Labour Party, a close ally of Sir Keir Starmer, resigning in the last few minutes over those international development cuts.
Behind the curtain, the murmurs have begun. A leadership challenge, still whispered, still unofficial, but gaining confidence with every dip in the polls. The irony? Starmer's biggest threat might not be the Tories at all. It's the Labour Party itself, slowly remembering it used to have a spine. And the public. They're starting to clock what's been nagging them for months. The difference between Labour silence and a Conservative shrug is getting dangerously hard to spot. So the question lingers, uneasy, unspoken, but hanging there like a tabloid headline just waiting for the next scandal. Can Starmer still become the leader he promised to be? Or has the public already changed the channel? Because here's the truth. Trust doesn't return with a rebrand. Not when thousands are outside your front door chanting. Not just because you failed, but because you forgot why they believed in you in the first place. The crowd wasn't looking for a resignation to fill tomorrow's papers. They wanted one for the history books. And what did Keir Starmer do in response? He blinked, repeatedly, like a man whose glasses had just fogged up in a sauna of public disappointment. His first public comments on the protests were so aggressively neutral, Switzerland issued a cease and desist. He expressed concern, he expressed understanding, and then presumably went back to rearranging his bookshelf by color. "We're talking to the Prime Minister about it," he said. "We'll see how that turns out. We have a very good dialogue," and I think he was very happy about how we treated them. To be fair, being Prime Minister isn't easy. It's not all tea and photo ops. But Starmer's first weeks in power haven't looked like leadership. They've looked like an administrative error, like a man hired to rebuild the house who showed up with IKEA instructions, no tools, and zero memory of where the front door is. Let's talk specifics. His sudden reversal on green policies, that was a big one. He campaigned like a climate crusader, solar panels for all, wind turbines stretching to the horizon, but the second he got the keys, he backpedaled faster than a squirrel on roller skates. Why? Budget constraints, he said. Translation, the same tired excuse every government pulls when they realize saving the planet isn't nearly as profitable as ignoring it. And then there's the NHS, Britain's most cherished and perpetually bruised institution. Starmer promised to heal it, fund it, staff it, revolutionize care. So far, a handful of strongly worded letters and the occasional sympathy tweet. Meanwhile, NHS workers are burning out faster than a British summer. Short, unpredictable, gone before you even get your hopes up. And let's not forget workers' rights. Strikes are sweeping the country. Train operators, teachers, junior doctors, you name it, they're marching. Starmer, the supposed champion of labor, has responded with all the passion of a lukewarm cup of tea. He supports fair wages. In theory, but in practice, it's all been non-committal nods and a carefully rehearsed silence that speaks volumes.
To speak to this man, not your security. You have failed me.
Thank you.
I've been a Labour voter my entire life. You have failed to be the opposition. You have failed to ask whether lockdown was functioning.
Just behind. Can we just
Do you understand? Thousands of people have died because you have failed to do your job and ask the real questions. Well, I am telling you now, and I hope this goes out, you have failed this country. You have.
In practice, Starmer seems more focused on balancing the budget than balancing a society that's tipping into full-blown crisis. So when thousands marched on Downing Street, it wasn't wasn't just a reaction to one broken promise. It was the collective roar of people who felt conned. After years of clown car politics, the new guy was supposed to bring order, clarity, leadership, not silence and spreadsheet jargon. Some came dressed as nurses. Others carried fake resignation letters addressed to Starmer, just to save him the admin. One protester was even spotted dragging a life-sized cardboard cutout of the Prime Minister straight into a recycling bin. Carbon-neutral dissent at its finest. Media coverage split as predictably as ever. Right-wing outlets pounced, gleefully declaring Starmer's leadership in crisis, practically salivating over the footage. Meanwhile, left-leaning commentators muttered into their oat lattes, disappointed but not surprised, like a national mantra for broken expectations.
So today I can announce we're going to cut bureaucracy across the state, focus government on the priorities of working people, shift money to the front line. So I'm bringing management of the NHS back into democratic control by abolishing the arm's-length body NHS England. That will put the NHS back at the heart of government where it belongs.
Online, it was chaos, a digital free-for-all, TikTok edits set to dramatic violin music, threads accusing Starmer of being a Tory in disguise. Reddit was ablaze with calls for a national do-over, as if Britain were just a badly written season of a Netflix drama in desperate need of a new showrunner. Inside Parliament, the mood wasn't much better. Tensions simmered, backbenchers grumbled, whispers of rebellion began to echo louder through the corridors. Some Labour MPs, especially those still stubbornly attached to actual leftist ideals, started sharpening their rhetorical knives. Starmer now stands at a fork in the political road. Double down on centrism and pray the protests burn out, or pivot hard and try to win back the people who feel ghosted by the man they once believed might finally turn the page. If he chooses the former, he risks fading into a footnote. Just another chapter in the long, tragic saga of British politics. If he chooses the latter, he'll have to do something radical. Actually keep a promise. Either way, the glossy image, the calm, competent, sensible savior of British politics, it's cracked. Because it turns out, bland competence doesn't cut it when the nation's on fire. Metaphorically, of course. For now.
Thank you for joining me in Downing Street today. Last night, the President of the United States acted for his country, and that is his mandate. Today, I will act in Britain's interests with mine. I understand how important this is for your businesses, as it is for the British people. So we move now to the next stage of our plan. Decisions we take in coming days and weeks will be guided only by our national...
For now, public trust hangs by a thread. Once broken, it doesn't come back with a press release and a fresh tie. It comes back through action, through vision, through courage, and maybe, just maybe, through finally accepting that trying to please everyone ends up pleasing no one. Starmer wanted to be the man who restored faith in government, the grown-up in the room, the calm hand on the wheel. But instead, he may go down as the man who reminded Britain just how good politicians still are at disappointing us. And the people, they're not waiting. They're marching, shouting, organizing, because they've learned something vital. Democracy doesn't end at the ballot box. Sometimes it starts at the barricades. So here stands Keir Starmer, speechless in the eye of a very British storm, rain-soaked, scandal-dodging, surrounded by voices louder and angrier than he ever expected. He wanted to lead a quiet revolution. What he got was a loud reckoning, and maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what he and the country needed. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Like and subscribe to our channel for more updates like this.